Yeah. Well, I mean, look, we opened up with it. We might need to dive right into it. The nightmare situation has happened in Texas when it comes to public schools, and this has been something that if you have been listening to me over the past few years, it's been something we've been very worried about because it's become clear that this is a goal of Governor Greg Abbott. Now, the reasons why we'll get into, I'll tell you all, it's not about providing better educational outcomes to Texas students, but this is something that very much the far right and the donor class have been wanting to see in the state of Texas for a long while. The writing's been on the wall. Just to quickly bring people up to speed, Abbott has made this a priority probably because he wants to run for president and he wants to make sure that big donors are happy with him. And the big question that was going to be asked of him was, why have you not privatized the school system? Because that is now becoming a plank of the Republican Party nationally. And he was going to have to answer, well, I can't get it, I can't force it past rural Republicans. Every time that vouchers have come up in Texas, except for last week, in recent years, it has been sort of taken down by rural Republicans who understand that these school districts provide an important service to their communities, both socially and educationally, but also economically. And as James Talarico was talking in the cold open that we played a second ago, the fact of the matter is that this school voucher system that they've been pushing is not about providing educational opportunities for poor and working class students. It's about making sure that the super rich who are already sending their kids to private schools can get a discount on that. Now, every time that that's come up, it has been shot down by a coalition of rural Republicans and Democrats. Most recently, though, Dade Phelan, who was the Speaker of the House beforehand, was also the Speaker of the House of the Texas legislature that brought charges against Mr. Ken Paxton in a very famous trial, which we covered on this program as well. He became the target of a lot of these kind of right-wing pro-voucher, pro-school privatization, pro-school robbery advocates, and they put a lot of money into unseating him. Which they failed, by the way, but they were able to unseat a whole host of Republicans in the state of Texas, incumbents, and replacing them with more pro-school robbery, pro-school privatization advocates in the Republican Party. So they came into this legislative session with the votes. There's a big fight about who's going to be the speaker. And there was a more conservative, more far-right candidate that was sort of brought up first. And then they brought on, the Republicans also ran a character named Dustin Burrows. I know a lot of people don't follow Texas politics as closely as I do, but just to give you all an understanding, Burrows is the guy who wrote the quote-unquote Death Star bill, something that I've covered on this program and written about a lot in Jacobin, which is a bill that basically tries to undermine local democracy in the state of Texas and prevent cities like Austin, cities like San Antonio and Houston from being able to pass their own laws, right? This is no friend of moderation of the Democratic Party or anything like that. And yet, unfortunately, you had a non-insignificant number of Democrats actively supporting him in the speaker's race to sort of fend off the far-right candidate. You see how well that worked out. There's been a lot of questions about whether or not they were going to be able to pass this bill. Because of what's happened in the past when it comes to Republicans, particularly rural Republicans, getting calls from their constituents that they don't want to harm their public school system. But no, as of last week, they were able to pass the vouchers in the House, which has already passed through the Senate. It's not officially been signed into law yet, but it looks like the writing's on the wall. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has said that he will, that he thinks that the Senate should just accept the bill that came through the House, meaning that for all intents and purposes, it is very much likely going to be going to Greg Abbott's desk. And we could get into some of the ways that he sort of put his thumb on the scale here. But that is where the state of the play is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we want to stick on Texas before we get to North Dakota. I mean, you had this exchange from Jeffrey Barry, who sort of told why he was, I guess, forced to.
Let's put this up really quick. So this is really One of the things that I think is really important to note about the school choice thing is that this is not grassroots or an organic demand in the state of Texas. So this election, by the way, when Abbott and all of these like school privatization advocates started running insurgent candidates against incumbent Republicans, do you know what those ads were about, Matt? They weren't about school choice. They were all about the border and how so-and-so is weak on the border. Now, again, that was a completely fabricated thing. I just can't imagine. It is you are divorced from reality when you're talking about Texas Republicans at this point being quote-unquote weak on the border. But that's what they ran on. Those were the kind of campaigns that they ran. And they're what they and it had very little to do, nothing to do with school vouchers. So again, because this is something that's not popular with Texans. When you poll Texans, overwhelmingly they are uninterested in the school voucher scam. It was something that's very contentious in Republican districts, in the first place. And what's so worrying about this is, one, the damage that this is going to do to education in Texas, the damage that this is going to do to children in Texas, because there's no oversight here. Right? There's no oversight for all this talk of like protecting your kids and stuff that we're getting from the right. They want people in this state now to send their kids to unsupervised institutions, for-profit institutions. And I shudder thinking about all the horror stories that we're going to hear in the next few years. But anyways, this is not something that's coming from the grassroots. It's not something that's coming from Republicans. This is something that is coming from those at the very, very top and the donor class and people like Greg Abbott. And this is a Texas Republican who voted yes on the vouchers, right? Cowardly, I will add. But this is a very notable thing because it shows just how threatened these figures are. This is Jeffrey Berry on Facebook responding to a comment from a constituent who says, hey, you said you would not do this. You would not vote for vouchers if you got elected. And this is his response back to this woman, Jeffrey Berry, again, Republican ledge member here in Texas. The bill was passing regardless of my vote. If I had voted against it, I would have had every single statewide and national political figure against me. Not to mention all of my bills vetoed. The consequences were dire with no upside at all. I understand your frustration and I am disappointed in the outcome as well. If I would have voted against this, all of my bills and appropriations were at risk. We have some great things we have already done for the district, blah, blah, blah. He also says, another person who said this, I understand your frustration. I'm frustrated too. When the president calls into your caucus meeting, says he will oppose those that vote against the bill, it is a real problem. Did you see that announcement? Which, yes, Donald Trump called into the caucus meeting in the legislature and basically said as much that like we will destroy you if you vote against this. And this is something
you were telling me like when you first read me last week what he said about that. I'm like, is he being dramatic or like what? What does he mean? He's all your stuff's gonna get vetoed, but that's actually that's actually a real threat.
No, this has happened. So this is something that I've reported in multiple places about Greg Abbott. And Greg Abbott is somebody who will veto bills out of spite. Things that you would never think that they would touch: funding of an animal shelter, foster kid like funding, all this kind of stuff. Will shut it down. And as shown, and remember, he's a tyrant governor. He's been governor for a very long time, and you've seen how weak the Democrats are at challenging him. The only people who could challenge him are the Republicans, and he's learned he's going to keep them on an extremely tight leash. Right? The fact that he was able to unseat people who are members of his own party, right, members of the right, have every like advantage that you can imagine in politics right now, shows just how strong he has become. And yes, he was directly threatening members of the legislature that they needed to listen to him, not to their own voters. And again, we'll get into some of the damages that come from this, but this is the real fundamental thing, is that we are at a moment in Texas right now, and it didn't start here. You can go all the way back and some of the horrific things, for example, that we've seen with abortion in this state, where the government here is not responding to, an unfortunate for us, but very real sentiment amongst like Texans. No, the government here is completely doing the bidding of the super rich, of far right ideologues, and a very, very small minority of the state. Now, we have like drama to get into too from the thing, but if there's anything else that you wanted to add, go.
No, by all means.
So this is what happens. Basically, you're getting threats to force this through because, again, nobody wants it. A lot of people are making a lot of money. Let's play some of this from James Tallarico, because One of the things that I think is really damaging and dangerous too is that this bill kind of two tracks here. You have the school voucher system, which again is going to take money out of the public system and send it to the private schools, which would be very damaging, obviously, as you see more and more money getting funneled out of the already underfunded schools. Now, there's a second part of, and Texas is a fairly wealthy state compared to other parts of America, but there's a lot of poverty in this state as well. And Texas has not been funding their schools for years. Now, they have created a crisis. We're going to talk about this with Megan later, but this is how these guys wage war on public goods, popular public goods, by undermining them, defunding them, making them purposefully run poorly so that they can eventually gut them. So for years, Texas schools have been underfunded. They ran a separate bill which will increase the funding for schools marginally, which will increase teacher pay. Hey, these are all great things. That's why a lot of people voted for it. But as James Tallarico gets into it here, this is a temporary situation. In fact, probably set up to cover up the serious damage that's going to be done once the full effects of this defunding system that they put into place.
My question to you, and I just want a straight answer. I'm trying to be respectful in my questioning of you. I'd like a respectful answer in return. Will this bill catch us up to 2019 funding levels? That's a yes or no question.
I believe that this is a bipartisan effort to close the gap. No. Yeah.
I'm going to take that as a no until I get a yes. I want...
The gallery will refrain from making these remarks or outbursts during the debate.
Chairman.
No.
Yes, there you are, Honorable Mr.
Decorum.
Yeah, I mean, look, what is very clear there is that, there is no plan for the future of public education in Texas, right? Which is something that is extremely, extremely dangerous, for us to sort of be facing as we are seeing this attempt to sort of pull out, funding from the bottom, through the voucher system, pulling out money from the public system, sending it to the private system. We are also sailing right for another cliff of underfunded schools. And the fact of the matter that they don't even have, after all this money and time and energy and attention that has been put on this issue, Matt, that you don't really have a straight answer on the question about whether or not this is actually going to materially increase funding, I think shows how seriously these folks take it.
I mean, he started laughing,
Yeah.
like after he gave the answer. It's so sick. I mean, it is like the level of shamelessness is just unbelievable. Like this is people's future. This is the future generations of your state, and how they occupy themselves for thousands of hours a year. And who knows how much funding this is bipartisan. I mean, despicable stuff.
Exactly. And I mean, shall we get into some of the reasons why this is happening before we get into some of the paid figures who've been pushing it?
Yeah.
So look, I know everybody likes to talk about this stuff with Texas because for some reason, Texas has become a completely mystified place in most people's minds. Yeah. There are folks like Tim Dunn, the billionaire who definitely are trying to push a kind of crazy Christian nationalist view. I'm not saying to not take that threat seriously. But what frustrates me so much is when people don't realize that Texas is also a place to make a lot of fucking money. And this is not just, now kids are going to be, having more religious education because we're pulling them out. So look, that's part of it for some folks. But the fact of the matter is that Texas is one of the largest states by population in the country. Our school system is in the billions. And that is something that is big dollar signs for wealthy people who want to make a lot of money from this. Jeff Yoss, who's somebody who is who's a Pennsylvania billionaire, big-time GOP donor, somebody who's heavily invested in these school privatization efforts, both getting them passed and also, surprise, surprise, on the back end as well, right? So there's a whole host of people, these vendors, who are hoping that they're going to be able to make a lot of money by providing certain kind of materials to these schools, by outright owning these schools. Private systems mean plenty of boondoggles for private actors to take our public money. So we still have public money going into the system. We're still going to be paying taxes in the state of Texas. The difference is, instead of that money going to your public high school, right, or middle school, elementary school, and educating this next generation, it's going to fly off to enter the bank account of some fucking rich asshole in Pennsylvania, right? This is the fundamental thing. It's all about the money. And liberals, unfortunately, I find, get really distracted because they want to talk about Christian nationalism. They want to talk about the Bible. They want to talk about all this kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong. I think that's bad. I get it. But the reason this kind of stuff happens is not because Texas has became more religious in the past 30 years. It's because Republicans have cemented and gained so much control over our government that rich people say, hey, you know what? I need to get some extra money. I might as well see if I can shake that piggy bank down there in Texas, and I'll be able to buy it pretty cheaply. Greg Abbott, they also gave Greg Abbott something like $12 million, right? It was a lot of money. But when you think about the massive returns that him and his friends are going to be able to get from pilfering, robbing our public school system, it's nothing. It's a very, very small investment. And that is